Hello, welcome to another episode of Forgotten Cemeteries of Pacific Northwest, and happy October. Today we're at Wyeth Cemetery, located in Wyeth, Oregon, our first Hood River County visit as well. Alternative names of the cemetery include Gordon-Gray Cemetery. There's just one, so let's go meet some of the local residents and hear their story. Alrighty, as we approach the cemetery, a little history on this one. This would be a Haunted Cemetery October episode, so I hope you enjoy it. If you remember last year, we visited 3 cemeteries during October that were allegedly haunted, so spice things up a little bit. This haunting, however, at this cemetery is one of the lesser known legends in my readings. I don't think a lot of people know about it. Sadly, people often think this is a pet cemetery, but it is indeed a people one, because there's like hiking trails around here and people just come across it and they're like, oh, it must be for pets. No, it's people. Unknown on establishment date, but the earliest burial year is 1889, I believe. There's 13 burials per the Oregon Burial Site Guide. Correction, 13 burials per find a grave, but the Oregon Burial Site Guide says 14, so somebody's missing. Online reports say half of the graves are unmarked. Guess we'll see for ourselves today. And there is like, I had trouble finding the cemetery at first, and there's like rogue burials in the forest just randomly everywhere with like little crosses. It's kind of neat, a little eerie, but still kind of active at this particular cemetery in this location. I think there was a 2019 marker, and that would be of Helen of Wyeth, epic medieval title there on her headstone, and we'll visit it. A family cemetery overall, as Gordon shows up a bit here, and Gordon is one of the alternative names. It appears that the Gordon family were pioneers of Wasco County, coming to Oregon in 1874, but didn't settle in Wyeth until 1889, I believe. Coincidentally, a 1-year-old named Ray Gordon is listed on Find a Grave as being the first burial in 1889, if that's accurate. No marker for that individual, unfortunately. So it might determine our cemetery's start year. I guess there was only like 2 homesteads in this area back then, the Gordons and the Grays. As far as the town of Wyeth, it appears to be just a camping area with trails these days. It's named after Nathaniel Wyeth, who was a traveler in the Pacific Northwest during the 1830s. He planned on making it big in the Oregon country with the ice-making business, apparently, but it failed miserably twice. And the settlement of Wyeth hits its population peak in 1915 with a population of 80 people, but they all moved out later. For such a small cemetery, we have a lot of drama here. We'll meet a man who moved to Oregon and changed his name after facing legal consequences. An individual who had a terrible ending via being run over by a train. Or did he? Strange deaths reported around mile marker 55 and 57 in the early 1900s. You also have another allegedly train track victim buried at the cemetery, so there's a second one. And we'll visit the headstone of the famous Civil War veteran ghost of this cemetery, who is said to walk the cemetery and haunt it. Lots of sorrow here, potential murder victims, young deaths, etc. We'll see how the energy is during our tour and determine for ourselves, so hope you enjoy it. Our first stop, and it's a little odd because the sun is like changing its angle trying to illuminate the headstone. That's a little curious. But we have Charles Gray here. At least when he was alive, that's what you'd call him by. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But he was born in 1861 in Illinois. Came to Oregon in 1880 and for some reason changed his name to Charles Gray. He would settle in Wyeth and marry a Gordon family member. When he died at the age of 55, though, the locals learned that his real name was Henry Gras, because he shared with his father-in-law, James Gordon, that when he lived in Illinois, he got into a neighborhood feud with an opposing faction, apparently, and injured someone. Not sure how severely, gang violence on the farm, but he was fearing legal action to the point where he fled to Oregon and changed his name, hoping to never be found by the law again. But we found him. Alrighty, our next story is a string of odd deaths and includes Herman Fuku, it's a hard last name to say, who has no marker from my understanding in the cemetery, so he's somewhere out here in the forest. And we're not even sure if it's his real name. We'll discuss why soon, but we will find out. It was verified later on in the story. But Herman was originally from Wisconsin, and the write-up made it sound like he hitched a ride along a train at a very young age. So the story goes, train number 11 ran over a man, and the man's body was dragged a mile before the train could stop. I guess gravel was like kicking up under the train, indicating that something was caught, so we better stop. However, upon discovering the body, there was no way of telling if the train truly killed him or how. It was a suspicious death, and the theory is that maybe someone purposely placed it there on the train tracks after being murdered, like someone hiding a crime, if you will. The coroner would be called out, and the body was so badly mangled that performing an ID was like impossible. The only thing they found was a tin tag that said Herman Fuku. He had no money on him, and one letter from a firm in Minneapolis that had the same name, so it was a little odd. Sadly, it was determined that he may have been of foreign birth, and his true family would never know his fate. The write-up mentions a rough estimate of Herman's age was 25, but Finder Grade is saying 15 for some reason, so there might be a little typo in there. What's odd is that this would be the third to fourth man that would be found dead at mile marker 55 and 57 in the early 1900s. Two men meeting the same fate as Herman, apparently, so it's getting a little suspicious. And one man was fished out of the river near here. So, overall, they thought maybe there was a murderer out there hiding in the area, just hiding his crime and throwing dead bodies on the train tracks to make it look like they were hit. However, the coroner did write to the address found on the letter found on Herman and received a reply from Herman's parents, who stated he was 18 and left home 3 months ago in 1909. Not the news they wanted to hear, unfortunately. That's really interesting. Every headstone I go to, it's like the sun, I don't know, that's where it changes its angle and it illuminates the headstone. That's that's interesting. So here we have Frederick Fitzpatrick, born in Canada. Unsure what year, but he was a foreman of the Thai gang. Much like Herman, he was found mangled on the train tracks in 1906. It was suspected that he was walking along the tracks and got stuck by the train. I say that because they used supposed to be walking in the article, like they weren't really sure if he got hit by a train or not. It was a little suspect. Unsure what the investigation results were, but a bit odd considering we just heard Herman's story. And finally, the man of the hour, Edwin Gordon, who will discuss his profile here before discussing the hauntings. He was born in 1810 in Massachusetts, served in Company I of the 111th Ohio Volunteer Infantry during the Civil War, who had quite the list of engagements, actually. One of the more important Union victories was at the Battle of Nashville, which showcased George Henry Thomas versus the famous John Bell Hood. This battle would result in one of the biggest wins for the Union side, and that was because it put an end to the Army of the Tennessee, the principal of the Confederate Army during this time. So overall, the 111th was a vital regiment to the Union and to the Civil War. And now onto the haunted stuff, which I know some of you love. It is said that the ghost of Edwin Gordon, the headstone we just visited, walks about the cemetery. Several people have claimed to have seen him. I haven't seen him yet. But the descendant of a family actually posted in a forum that her grandfather used to speak of Edwin haunting their cemetery and tell stories of sightings. I don't know if he was just teasing her, but she made it sound like it was legit, that you often will see him if you visit. Maybe we'll run into him during the tour, I don't know. Unsure what he looks like, what he's wearing, if it's one of those night hauntings. Limited on the information, unfortunately, but a cool little small cemetery and a local legend, perhaps. And one of them not well known until now to you guys, but it sure does make a good ghost story, huh? The Civil War veteran that walks the cemetery and haunts it. Well, time for the tour. And very quiet. I'm sure you'll have the whole place to yourself. Really pretty area. Hopefully you can see the mountain in the background. But there is a little area. Google will lead you here to a parking spot, like a little patch of dirt on the side of the road. The location of the cemetery, however, is incorrect on Google. It'll lead you in the middle of the forest, which isn't too bad because there's actually rogue burials over there, just randomly in the forest, somewhere over there in the forest. But we won't go there. We're going to focus on the cemetery. Watch these rocks when you get in. The only thing I could tell you is look for a trail on the side of the road. That's to find the cemetery. That's your best bet. It was a tiny bit difficult to find, but not too bad because I roamed around in the forest at first. But again, you know, a little surprise of random burials with crosses on it. So you'll come to the cemetery. You'll have it all to yourself, like many of our journeys. Looks like there used to be a fence around it. Unmarked graves here and there, like this one. Something used to be there. All that resides now is a little hummingbird figurine. And we have that little cross. No marker. Here's one of the Gordon family members here. The iconic finger pointing up to heaven. Must have been religious folks. And the runaway Gras. Interesting story there, huh? This looks kind of recent. 2007, yeah. Well, there's American flags, so somebody's stopping by once in a while, paying their respects. Guessing that's maybe the Gordon or Gray family member. And the famous Edwin Gordon, one of the lesser known legends, I'm guessing, in Oregon. This one was interesting with Adams. Always fishing. Oh, there's another one there. So, quiet one, an interesting visit. And there's Fred there, talked about him. And probably one of the coolest headstones we've seen as far as titles, Helen of Wyeth. She lived. Must have been a simple lady. I don't know if that was a marker at one time. Maybe. Guess is as good as mine, because like I said, the report said there's lots of unmarked graves. And there's a little flagstone or something with the angel design on there. But that's the tour. Quite a small one, but a fun one, full of a lot of interesting stories. I didn't expect to find that many when I visited. I was like, geez, a lot of drama at this one. And plus the haunted Civil War veteran. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video, and happy Halloween as part of the haunted cemetery episode of this channel. If you have any other recommendations for cemeteries to visit in Oregon or even Southern Washington, feel free to comment below. Hope you're doing all right, and stay safe out there. Thanks for watching.